Chapter 12, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. After his hour on the wheel was over, Quasimodo was finally set free. The guard removed the chains, and the hunchback jumped down off the wheel. Carefully, Quasimodo picked up his ragged shirt and covered the wounds on his back. Then he ran toward Notre Dame Cathedral. The people of Paris went back to their homes. The show was over. For the next few days, Paris was strangely quiet. The bells of Notre Dame did not ring. Quasimodo was too sad to ring them. He just sat high up in the bell tower, watching the people below. The workmen who fixed the church roof were afraid to go near him, and so he was left alone to sit next to his favorite gargoyle or in his small stone room in the bell tower. Quasimodo stayed high above the city. The large stone gargoyles were his only friends. There he sat from morning to night. His one good eye searched the crowd below. What he was looking for, no one could say. The bells have not rung in days, the people said. Quasimodo must still be angry about his whipping, others replied. But Quasimodo was not angry. He was worried. What had happened to Esmeralda, he wondered. Was she safe? Had the soldiers harmed her? He looked for her every day, but he never saw her in the streets below. At night, Quasimodo stayed in his room. He cried for the gypsy girl and her little goat. He did not know why she did not dance or do tricks with her goat. It was as if the soldiers had removed her from the planet. The people of Paris did not see Pierre the juggler either. That was because the soldiers had wounded me badly. A few days after I had been knocked out, I awoke back at the Court of Miracles. I still had a terrible headache from the clubbing. I learned that some of the beggars had rescued me. A beggar woman had sewn up the cut on my head. Slowly, the wound healed. But my soul was still hurting. Why had Esmeralda been arrested? What did the archdeacon want with her? By order of the king of beggars, everyone was trying to find out what had happened to Esmeralda. The army of beggars listened to every soldier. They spied on all the guards. For many days, there was no word. Then, a one-armed beggar came to the Court of Miracles. He whispered something to the king. The king nodded sadly and called me. Pierre, he said, we must speak. As I listened, he told me what had happened to Esmeralda. With each word, my heart froze. The worst had come to pass. The Archdeacon Claude Frollo has proved that Esmeralda is a witch, he told me. This is a very serious crime. Witches are hung or burned alive. But Esmeralda is not a witch, I cried. Of course not, the king replied. But the archdeacon thinks Jolly is a magical animal, and that is not all. Tell me, I begged. Esmeralda has already been sentenced to death. She is to be hung in the square tomorrow. She and the goat will both die. No, this cannot be, I moaned. No. Be brave, Pierre, the king commanded me. A beggar's life means nothing. We are not important. Esmeralda will die by order of the archdeacon. We are helpless to stop it. The king left me alone. I wept with grief and fury. What could I do? Esmeralda had saved me from being hung, but I could not save her. The next day dawned. I rushed down to the square. The wheel that the hunchback had been whipped on was now gone. In its place, a tall scaffold had been built. The scaffold had a long flight of steps leading to the top. A man stood there. He was dressed in black and wearing a hood. A shudder ran through me. This was the hangman. The hangman was busy putting up 2 long ropes, one for Esmeralda and one for Jolly. At the end of each rope was a noose, ready for their necks. People were already milling about. In Paris, a crowd always gathered for a whipping or an execution. The people of Paris are cruel, I thought to myself. They all come today to watch my sweetheart die, just as they came to watch Quasimodo get whipped. Quasimodo, if it hadn't been for her kindness to the very beast who tried to steal her, then Esmeralda would be safe now. The archdeacon would never have caught her. These thoughts troubled me as I waited in the square. As the hours passed, the streets became more crowded. People pushed each other to get a better view of the scaffold. Finally, the clock struck noon. The doors of the Palace of Justice slowly opened, and there stood Esmeralda, her clothes torn and dirty, her head bowed low. She was thin and pale. She was chained, and 2 of the guards dragged her between them. Behind Esmeralda was the goat. Jolly's guard pulled the stubborn goat along. Esmeralda was to die, and I could do nothing. Tears ran down my cheeks. The guards led Esmeralda up the steps and onto the wooden scaffold. The old bailiff was there. He held a parchment in his hands. On that piece of paper were written the words that would doom Esmeralda. I almost rushed forward at that moment, but a hand on my shoulder stopped me. It was the king of beggars. "Hold, Pierre," he commanded me. "No power on earth can save her."